Why are we not going? There we go. Now we're getting some clock. There we go. Well, that was a little weird. Let's see if this goes. What? We are not receiving data from your encoder. Please make it as configured. Oh, why are we being like this? Come on. So it says that I'm live, but then right above it, it says we are not receiving data from your encoder. So how live am I? Oh, great. Oh, wait, but then right above it, it says we are not receiving data from your encoder. So how live am I think. Oh, great. Why can't I type? What's going on? Oh, wait, but then right above it, it says we are not receiving data from your encoder. Can't see video, but can hear voice. All right. I think that it's going to kick in a second. There was some sort of weirdness going on with YouTube where it said, oh yeah, it's live, but the preview window wasn't live. So let me try to fix that and see if maybe people can see me now. YouTube's being a little squirrely, but I think it's better now. You guys let me know when you can see my face, because I think it's working now. Yep, now it's repeating. Okay, so I turned that off. Dorn says he can hear me. Six Gunner says he can see my face, but it's not moving. Well, that's a different. That was a picture. This is the actual. Now we're getting people who can see me. There we go. All right. There was an update with my software, and it took some time for. When I went live, YouTube was like, "Yeah, you're live. Oh, by the way, we're not getting anything from your encoder," which is a strange thing to say. And then all of a sudden, it seems to have kind of fixed itself. So, thank goodness for that. All right. There we go. Okay. Now, I hope you're all having a good morning. It's been a lovely weekend so far here. It was not too humid, not too hot, nice and sunny. I spent some of yesterday, as you know, we all should, in a game store. I was admittedly watching a game being played, not playing, but I had other stuff I had to get done, so then I came home afterwards. But so yeah, that's where it's at. You're probably picking up a cricket or two. It's because we've got the window open, and crickets don't know what time it is, evidently, and they don't take direction. So when I say, "Hey, crickets, stop," nothing. Okay. Let's see, who've we got watching today? Let me see here. We've got someone from Scotland, Western Australia, Austria, Poland. The Noob Painter says it would help if he unmuted YouTube. That's true. That's true. Let's see here. Good morning, Adam. Still too hot here in Northern California. Yep, California, I'm assuming. NorCal. Torch, how you doing? Captain Bishop, good morning from Wales. Sorry, good afternoon from Wales. It's morning here. It's afternoon by you. So that's cool. I'm glad to see we've got a bunch of people here already. Sweden, Alberta, Aberdeen, Scotland. Let's see, what else have we got? Got a bunch of other people. Finland, good morning from California. Dallas, London, Connecticut, Tampa Bay, Montreal, New Jersey, Sweden, Istanbul, not Constantinople. I do that almost every week, or well, every 2 weeks. Tampa, Florida, Australia, Germany, England, Poland, Ontario, Quebec. You guys are sort of near each other. I mean, you know, globally. Texas, listening from work, always a good idea. Got Ontario, Canada. We got Canterbury, which I'm probably mispronouncing. Denmark, Stratford upon Avon. That's very, very, very UK. Lillehammer. I want to say that at some point the Olympics were there, I think. Building my Terrorgeist as I watch. I have a Terrorgeist built, based. Everything's all ready to go. I just need to prime him and then paint him. And he's been sitting in the basement. I've been working on other projects, but I keep looking at him. And I'm like, I really need to do that. Actually, yesterday would have been a great day to go outside and prime him with like a bone-colored spray primer. You know, I'm probably going to end up using airbrush to prime him, but because he's kind of basically a big skeleton dragon, a bone-colored primer would be just fine. So that's why I'm thinking about maybe using one of the Krylon, camo colors that I love so much. But the only downside is because he's so large and sort of a strange shape, it's going to be hard to get primer with a rattle can into some of the spots. Like under his wings and under his, I was going to say belly, but he's a skeleton, so he doesn't really have a belly anymore. And I think it might be easier to do that with the airbrush, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'll do a little bit of both. We'll see how it goes. Let's see here. Pontiac, Illinois, Calgary. Warhammer Workshop says it is 3:08 now. Hi, Adam. It's 9:08 here, so there you go. Alrighty. So I've got a subject for today, and I'm still going to talk about it. But our friends over at Games Workshop have kind of upstaged me a little bit this morning. So we'll probably talk a little bit about that as well. And someone just asked, what do you think about the new Necromunda announcement? So for those of you who haven't checked the Warhammer community webpage yet today, and if you're like me, you sort of just woke up, so it's understandable that you wouldn't. Oh, where am I going? Over here, right there. So anyway, breaking news. Necromunda returns. Now, yesterday was not Warhammer World, but Forge World. Is that what it's called? That's a terrible name. Did I just make that up? Forge World Open? What the heck? No. Oh, Forge World Open. Yeah, because Forge World would be a terrible name. All right, so in which they show off a whole bunch of stuff and talk about new products coming out and things like that. People come in and it's like a thing. It's obviously over in the UK, which is where Forge World is. Well, evidently it came out during that event that they're going to be releasing Necromunda. And it's called Necromunda Underhive. Necromunda is back. It's been more than a decade since we last visited the Underhive, which in my mind is not true. It's been less than 6 months. But very soon you'll be able to battle it out in the depths of Hive Primus. Now, here's the deal. This is very confusing to me, because back in the spring, they released Shadow War Armageddon, which is basically Necromunda. Admittedly, it did not have any of the gangs and all that kind of stuff, but it was happening on Armageddon in an Underhive, and it was normal 40k dudes fighting against each other and stuff like that. And it was using pretty much almost exactly the old Necromunda rules, which were modified 2nd edition rules, I believe. So you had all kinds of pinning, and you had your, the weapon damage, or the things where the weapons might break. You had all the stuff in there that made Necromunda in my mind, other than the gangs. And a lot of people, when the game came out, complained because they were like, well, hey, there's no gangs. I don't want to play unless there's gangs. And so I get that. Now, there's a slim chance, but it seems very slim, that maybe they're just releasing gangs to be used in Shadow War. But really, the way this all kind of reads out, it seems as if They're just going to release. So Necromunda dives into the underworld of the Imperium, allowing players to control their hive gang, a pack of ruthless criminal killers, augmented with black market cybernetics, gene modifications, and scavenged weaponry. Where Warhammer 40k puts you at the head of an army, in Necromunda the scale is much smaller, but the action is just intense. Every single ganger counts. And then there's a cover of what I assume to possibly be a book, although I don't know, because it says Warhammer Community at the top, so I don't know. It's very strange. Um, Between intense skirmish battles, your gang will grow from a pack of battle-hungry Jubes to a feared and respected syndicate of hardened veterans. So it's the same kind of thing. It's narrative campaign where your guys are, advancing and stuff like that, or ladies, as you can see here in the imagery. You've got some gangers from house. So these are actual pictures of models, painted, as you can tell. And as you get a lot closer and you blow it up, the paint doesn't look as hot, but whatever. So yeah, you get, these images here about House Escher. Here is House Goliath. This is all, basically old stuff. The models are not old, but House Escher, House Goliath, all those kind of things, those came from the original game if you're not familiar with it. What makes these miniatures even better is that they'll be available in multi-part plastic kits, so easy to assemble, customize, and paint into a gang of your own. So these are not going to be like Forge World pieces. These are not going to be metal. These are not going to be fine cast, thank God. They'll be, multi-part plastic. Probably like those little single sprues, that you get, or maybe they'll be like kind of like the stuff that's coming out right now for Blood Bowl or whatever. Like the teams where you buy a box and there's a team in there. You buy a box, it'll be a gang. So that's interesting that they're doing that, but it's also confusing to me. I'm gonna just go and look at it, see what the chat is saying here. So, hello. Oh, for God's sakes, was there some sort of problem? Here I am yammering away, and evidently something has happened to the stream. Anybody? Oh, for God's sakes. Hello? Can you guys, is it working? Okay. New Painter says I reloaded the stream and it locked up again. Spanish, mine is acting like it's loading, but nothing is coming up after what you said you were going to talk about, and then it ended. So that was a good long, spectacular. Well, okay, now it's caught up on my end. Anybody? Still says they're not receiving data from my encoder, which doesn't make any damn sense. Stream, there we go. Now the stream health is good again. Okay. Okay, just caught back up. Okay. So now the question is, how much of my yammering about Necromunda did anybody catch? That's probably going to be an important question. Good morning from Houston, Mike. How you doing? All right, so Lord. All right, where are we at? Nothing. Okay, so I said I was going to talk about, and then everything went to crap. All right, we'll try this again. Oh. Okay, health is good. So, as I said, yesterday in England, in the UK, there was there was Forge World Open, not Forge World World, which would be weird. They do Games Workshop World. No, Warhammer World is what they do at one point in the year, and then Forge World Open because Forge World World sounds dumb. So anyway, So during that, they announced the return of Necromunda. Man, I have really good stuff that I said there. You guys all missed it. That's a bummer. So anyway, here's Necromunda. It's the new thing, and it says, Necromunda is back. It's been more than a decade since we last visited the Underhive. And then I said before, by my count, it's only been about 6 months, if less. But very soon you'll be able to battle it out in the depths of Hive Primus. So anyway, they came out with a game back in the spring called Shadow War Armageddon, which is basically Necromunda. Let's just put our cards on the table. It's basically Necromunda. It uses the Necromunda rules, only slightly modified. It did not use any of the gangers. And a lot of people who played Necromunda back in the day were unhappy about that. They wanted the gangers and all that kind of stuff. It came with, if you were lucky enough to get one of the big boxes, it came with a bunch of terrain. The original Necromunda came with cardboard terrain. This Necromunda came with really nice plastic terrain. But those boxes sold out immediately. Now, you can still buy the terrain separately, but then it's not as quite a good of a deal. But you can just buy the book if you want to play. And the trick is the new Necromunda, aka Shadow War Armageddon, takes place in the Underhive, but it's not amongst gangs. It's battles between small skirmish groups of normal 40k armies, Necrons versus Orcs, or Space Marine Scouts versus, I don't know, whatever, Inquisition. So that's interesting, that they came out with this game not that long ago, and now they've decided to also come out with Necromunda. So if you're new to the hobby, you may not be familiar with Necromunda, or perhaps you've only heard about it from the fond memories of other hobbyists. Necromunda dives into the underworld of the Imperium, allowing players to control their own hive gang, a pack of ruthless criminal killers augmented with black market cybernetics, gene modifications, and scavenged weaponry. So they've got, I don't know if this is the actual cover of the book, because it says Warhammer Community at the top, so that's sort of weird to me, but I don't know, maybe it's just a piece of artwork. And then down here they start showing, here's some images of some of the models. So you've got the Eschers, you've got a couple of models of the Eschers, you can see some of those guys here, and all this stuff is over on the Warhammer Community website if you want to peep it yourself. You got that lady there with a sword and a pistol. You've got some Goliaths who are basically super hopped up on roids. And some of them are, I don't know what that guy is. That guy's weird looking. But yeah, so they have these huge weapons and all this stuff. And it's going to be, according to them, Necromunda. Now, what's interesting is, like I said, Necromunda's kind of already occurred. So, well, no, I mean, it's not, obviously. Shadow War came out. J.E. Granberg says, why have Shadow War Armageddon, then have Necromunda Underhive? It seems like minor iterations of the same title. I agree. It does seem sort of weird. Now, when I first found out about this morning on some Facebook group I follow, somebody in the Facebook group who is a game designer of a small game said that he had heard that the new rules will be using a modification of 8th edition 40k rules, but without the whole you do all your stuff and then I do all my stuff kind of rules mechanic, which, I gotta be perfectly honest, it's really annoying. Like, I was watching this game, like I said yesterday, at my local game shop, and man, first turn is still really, I mean, I love a lot of the changes they made to 8th edition, but first turn is just so powerful. And it's just weird. I don't know why they would, it's just odd. Anyway, I wish that 8th edition, that the one thing I wish that they could have done to 8th edition is to use the same kind of mechanic that Warlord uses for bolt action, where it's unit by unit and it's random. You're pulling pieces out of you're pulling dice out of a bag. So I reach into the bag and I pull out a die and it says, oh, I can, the Axis player can pick a unit and move, and then you reach in the bag and then maybe the Axis player can do it again, and then you reach in the bag and then now the allied character or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. The thing that I also find weird is if they are going to modify and give new rules to Necromunda, then what they've basically done is this. Taken the old game, Necromunda, that people love, and they've taken the rules for that game and put it with models that people who love Necromunda don't want to use. Regular 40k models, they want to use their Ganger rules, or their Ganger models, or the new ones specifically. Then they've taken Necromunda, potentially, given it a new rule set, but the old models. So if you just wanted to play Necromunda again with new models, you kind of can't. It sounds like. I mean, we don't know anything about the rules yet. Like I said, these are rumors going around that it's going to be slightly modified 8th edition rules for this new Necromunda. But then why use the old models with new rules and then use the new models with old rules? You know what I mean? It just, well, not the new models, but I mean, I guess the 40K models. It just seems weird. If they were going to put these out within 6 months of each other, they could have probably just decided not to, sort of. You know what I mean? Like just kind of, I don't know. Are we getting... No, it says the health is good, but it stopped over here. Well, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so it's just, it's very confusing to me. I don't know why. It just seems very weird that they would come out with basically the spiritual successor to Necromunda in the beginning of the year. Well, in the spring, really. So, like, technically, I think it came out after Adepticon, pretty sure. And then decide to come out with what the game was the spiritual successor of not that much longer on in the same year. I mean, we don't know. To be fair, it might come out in 2018. But they've said, hey, look, breaking news, it's returning. Here's some models. But that's all they've told us so far. So it's weird. I don't know. We'll see what's going to happen. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. Like, I'm assuming they'll probably use the not the miniatures, sorry, the terrain that they've already set up for Shadow War. It would be weird to decide, no, we're going to make some completely new terrain. Maybe they are, though. I don't know. I'm pretty sure they're not going to release like cardboard terrain like they did back in the day for the original Necromunda. So there's that. It's just, I don't know. When I saw it this morning, I thought, is this a joke? I mean, it was kind of like it's not April Fools. I can't. I was flummoxed, frankly. The fact that they decided to put out Shadow War, which is Necromunda, and then not that much longer say, oh, but and we're also putting out Necromunda. Now, like I said, there's a possibility that maybe they're just putting out these gangs, and maybe these gangs will be something you can buy and then use the gangs in Shadow War. But they don't say that at all in here, so it's pretty unlikely that's the case. It seems as if it's another game, which is weird, because it seems like the second... It'd be kind of like putting out Space Hulk and saying, here's Space Hulk, and this is the type of game it is, and then, you know, within the same year putting out another game which is almost the same game as Space Hulk. It takes place in a spaceship, you have tiles, you move around, there's bad guys and good guys, you know, blips. Yeah, it just seems odd. It seems very odd. You're right, wubba wub. Wub de wub wub. Flummoxed is the word that I did use. I like that word. So anyway, it's very interesting. We all have to admit, honestly, it's not a dull moment these days with our friends over at Games Workshop, because yeah, it's all kinds of new stuff comes out pretty quickly, and it's pretty interesting. So yes, for those of you who are just joining, Necromunda is coming back again. And now it's going to have gangers. Like, I guess, so this lady here, you know, she every day she has to get up, you know, and put on this weird skull headdress, and I don't. It's just that's just doesn't look like, you know, to me that doesn't look like a ganger. I don't know what that looks like. I mean, it's a cool piece of artwork, but she doesn't look like she lives in filth. I'm just saying. You know, and these people, they don't. I don't. Like, she's got to put that top knot on top of her head like every morning and stuff like that. But she probably sleep. Well, I don't know. Maybe they've got some nice digs down there in the underhive. But the way that they always talk about it is it's filth and death all the time. So you know, I don't know. It's like there's a company that's got a game that's post-apocalyptic, and they've got some really great looking models, but like one of the factions, they're all clowns. They're like all killer clowns. And I'm thinking to myself, after the apocalypse, I'm not worried about clown makeup anymore. I'm really not gonna, you know, sell it that hard and go that direction. But you know, that's me. I'm different. Let's see here. Whatever. Philip Rules says that she sleeps with the skull on. Duh, that would be very uncomfortable. Having a giant skull on top of your head and those horns, like you would roll over and poke yourself in the eye. Like every morning, you'd be waking up with like you know, band-aids, I'd assume. So yeah, let's see here. Matt Liguri says, I can't hate on GW too much. General's Handbook 2 is giving some new life to my Night Goblins. The squigs will not be ignored. Oh, I'm not hating on Games Workshop. Not at all. I enjoyed Games Workshop stuff. I have been working this last couple of weeks on getting stuff painted and built. Um, don't get me wrong. I'm, again, like I said, flummoxed by this release this morning because I thought that they'd already put out Necromunda this year. You know what I mean? Since it's using the Necromunda rules. At the time when they did it, it seemed like they were like, we want to put out Necromunda again, but we don't want to spend the money to make all new gangs because that's going to take a lot of time and effort and all this stuff. So we'll just put out the rules, put out new terrain, which can be used in any kind of game, and then also, we'll be able to then, but then we'll be able to sell more of our current model line, which totally makes sense from a business standpoint. This seems confusing to me from a business standpoint. Now, admittedly, I'm no businessman, but it just seems weird. Again, flummoxed. So, what else have we got here? Michael Strange says, clowns be creepin' with or without the rule of law. Truer words have never been spoke. I will agree. Is Necromunda a good beginner game? Well, yes. So is Shadow War Armageddon, since Shadow War Armageddon is basically the original Necromunda rules. But both of them are designed that way. So is the one thing that the Games Workshop has been doing, and maybe this is part of it. See, I really thought they were going to come out with Mordheim now instead of Necromunda, but whatever. Um, they've come out with all kinds of different rule sets so you can start anywhere in the spectrum. It used to be for a long time that Games Workshop was like, well, you're either going to play 40K or you're going to play fantasy because we don't really have much else. Here and there they did. But in the last, say, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that was the only way to jump into the hobby. Maybe Space Hulk if they had it in stock, which they frequently didn't. Now, you can get in Shadow War Armageddon, soon to be Necromunda, Silver Towers, basically a board game, Betrayal at Calth, basically a board game. There's all those other ones, Lost Patrol, Gangs of Gomorrah, all that jazz. But then you can also get into Age of Sigmar Skirmish, regular Age of Sigmar, and now 40K, which is great. I'm at some point I'm assuming they're going to come out with 40K Kill Team again because then that will be just another entrance vector for people. It'll be basically like Age of Sigmar Skirmish, something along those lines. So yeah, Joshua says, Adam, Armageddon was a test to see if Necromunda would launch. That's a weird thing to do, to say, hey, we've got this idea. Let's do a thing that's very much like it to see if the thing that we want to do will work. Because again, it seems like you're cannibalizing your customer base. But again, I don't know. Let me see. I'm screwing up the chat here. I apologize. Oh dear. No, it's moving quickly. Am I right in thinking Shadow War is dealt with by GW Direct? This is going to be handled by the Forge World Specialist team? I don't know, because they said it's going to be plastic parts. I mean, if they were coming out in resin, not fine cast, but resin, like real resin, like Forge World resin, then I would be like, oh, this is a special Forge World thing. But the fact that it's coming out in plastic, I don't know. Now, they talked about it and showed it off at Forge World, open, whatever, Forge World Day, Forge World. So I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. Matt says Mordheim would have seemed to make sense since Frostgrave is pivoting to swashbuckler style now. Well, I don't know that it's pivoting. They are coming out with the Ghost Archipelago, which I will probably be able to take a look at Gen Con. I've got a meeting with Osprey, who are the guys who make Frostgrave. I've got a meeting with them on Thursday. So, and I know that they've been talking about the Ghost Archipelago, and so that's, I think, just it's not like they're deciding to move. I think that's just another setting. You know what I mean? But I kind of figured that GW would want to do their own Mordheim thing because Frostgrave is being so popular, and so they would want to go up against it. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see here. If I drink enough Nuln oil, will GW lower prices? No. No. I wouldn't do it. I think it would make you sick, so don't do it. Let's see here. What else have we got? More metal models would be nice, says Wubda Wub Wub. I'm going to get that right eventually. I mean, your mileage may vary. I don't like metal models myself, so but some people do love them. But I'm not a big fan. Like that's one of the several reasons why I don't play Infinity is because of the metal models. Um, yeah. Bubba Gump says, I feel like Necromunda invalidates Shadow War. I'm in the same boat a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see how it works out. And like again, this is very um, surface level what they did today. They showed off some models. They said they're going to be plastic, and they said the game's coming back, and it's allegedly based off of the old one. But that's about all they've said. They haven't said when. They haven't said what the rules are going to be like. There's not been a lot else in there, but it's something. Let's see here. What else have we got? What's your game plan for Gen Con? That's a good question. There was more to it, though. I apologize. Seeing as it's sold out and it's going to be packed, yes. So, okay, so that's kind of the subject for today. I'm going to talk about it a little bit right now. Actually, I'm going to go back to the screen. So, Gen Con is America's largest tabletop gaming convention. It's not the largest in the world. I think the largest in the world is Essen Spiel in Essen, Germany. And that is humongous, from what I understand. But this is the largest in America. Um, so the thing that's interesting is that Gen Con it's been around. This is its 50th year, so it's been going on for a long time. It was started by TSR, by the guys who were doing the original Dungeons and Dragons here in Wisconsin, where I live. And back in 2001 or 2002, 2003, somewhere in 2002, it moved to Indianapolis because it had started in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and then it moved to UW Parkside for a while, and then stuff and blah blah blah, and then eventually it went to Milwaukee, and then it was in Milwaukee for years, which is when I first started going to it back in 1992. So I was at the 25th Gen Con, and now I'm going to the 50th. So old. But so this year it's in the 50th. It's moving to Indianapolis, and it was always like when it was in Milwaukee, it was like 18,000 people, 19,000 people. It hit 20,000 one year, and everyone was like, "Whoa!" And then it moved to Indianapolis because there just wasn't enough space in Milwaukee. And then it grew and grew and it got to about 30,000 people in 2010. 2010 was the first year I went as a correspondent for Beasts of War. That was my first year reporting from Gen Con for Beasts of War. Since 2010, from 2010 to 2015, it went from 30,000 people to 60,000 people. It doubled attendance in 5 years, which is crazy, but it's because of all of the explosion of nerd culture, basically. Shows like Tabletop on YouTube, have made tabletop gaming, especially board gaming, super popular. The show with the nerds in the apartment, Big Bang Theory. All the Marvel movies and all the crazy, all that stuff has gotten huge, and because of that, the convention's gotten big. This year, though, because it's the 50th, even more people want to go. The estimates right now are that there will probably be between 65 and 70,000 people at the convention, and the reason they're able to estimate that is because they have started to sell out the tickets. They've never sold out before. They're always like, well, you just show up, bring your friends, But this year they had so many people buying tickets ahead of time that eventually they were like, all right, we need to cut off the 4-day passes now. And then they did. And then they cut off the Friday passes and the Sunday passes. I take that back. The Saturday and I think Friday passes are still available, but barely. Let's go look here. So I click over here. I go to this. 4-day, Thursday, Saturday, and Family Fun, aka Sunday badges, are sold out. A limited quantity of Friday badges still remain. So that's kind of crazy. Yeah, like I said, probably 70,000 people going to be there. 65 to 70,000 people. Over here, I have an image of. So this is the map of the convention center. It is humongous, but there's not just events going on in the convention center, which is humongous, as I've said. There's also events going on in the Marriott, the Westin, the Hyatt Regency, over here in this hotel, in this place, and the Crown Plaza, plus up here in what is called the Lucas Oil Stadium. This is where the Indianapolis Colts play American NFL football. There's events going on in there. There is on the field. I didn't know that. This on the field this year. You can go to the game library and sit and play board games on the field at Lucas Oil Stadium. Mayfair Games, their entire area is just in Lucas Oil Field. Holy crap, there's going to be laser tag. I didn't know that. Crazy. Now, maybe you're not on the field. Maybe it's the second level. No, I'm not a big football fan, but I'm pretty sure there's not like a floor above the football field. But if you look at this map, like I'm looking at this map, it says field, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff right there. So maybe it's in the basement. Maybe it's underneath the field. That'd be sort of weird. Well, anyway, whatever. This is True Dungeon. This is an anime and animation section. Bridge simulation games, that's cool. So there's going to be like Artemis and Horizons and a bunch of those cool games like that. But like this is what Gen Con has come to, where they are now spreading out to, I mean, you know, everywhere. This is actually a neat little web app, I'm not going to lie. So you can see all the different events and arcades and White Wolf and Chaosium and all, and then just here's the auction. I've got a good friend who spends almost his entire Gen Con in the auction room. That's just his thing. That's what he does. But if you go through on all of these and you click on them, you'll find out, oh, who has this? Oh, Tasty Minstrel Games. I've never heard of them. Collector's Cash. Over here, Crystal Cast. They make dice. Them I've heard of. Pagan Publishing, Arc Dream Publishing, Big G Creative. Chessex. Chessex also makes dice. Japanime. Privateer Press. Wow, Privateer Press has got a pretty small little booth. Like when you start to look at the other booths and the comparisons, that's interesting. So this is just the vendor hall. I'm pointing at the screen, but you can't see it. If you watch my mouse here, like this area here is just the vendor hall. And it's immense, but it's just the vendor hall. If you think about it, look at the comparison to that space here to an American football field here. Okay, so just, you know, FYI, that's a big, big, big dealer room, and it's full. And then down here, there's a bunch of places with other stuff going on, games. This is the Magic Hall where you play Magic. Fantasy Flight is all this over here. Now the trick is that as I'm showing you all of this, this is the first floor. As I click here, now I'm showing you the second floor. Now there is no second floor where the dealer hall would be, because it's a two-story room. But here's a bunch of stuff on the second floor. But if I go to the third floor, what else we got? I don't know if there is a third floor. Maybe there's not a third floor. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Oh yeah, here's the quiet room. There's a bunch of spas. Why does it say spa? That's weird. Paizo. Okay, this entire giant room is just Pathfinder. So, you know, like if you're into role playing and stuff like that, it's ridiculous. It's a humongous, ridiculously huge convention. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it a lot. Though the dealer room up here is going to be crackers, and specifically on Sunday, which is Family Day, it is going to be almost shoulder to shoulder in there, because it'll be the last day of the convention. So a lot of people are trying to get their last deals and things like that. Also, being Family Day, if 2015 was any indicator, which was the last time I was at Gen Con, Family Day means everybody brings a baby carriage or whatever sort of, you know, baby support unit, and that's problematic because they take up a lot more space. So, yeah, so it's going to be really interesting. Mike Guy says last year's dealer hall was a solid 5-mile walk for a full circuit. Yep, that does not surprise me at all. If you try to go through, like, you know, like walk down aisle by aisle, first of all, you're going to miss stuff, because if you try to walk aisle by aisle, they have a lot of things here. You guys can't see that mouse over here. If you try to just walk aisle by aisle by aisle, you can, but then you bump into things here, and then you have to go left or right, and then if you do that, maybe you miss things on this side that you didn't see on that side. it can be difficult. It looks like they've made it a bit more grid-like this year, so that's going to help. But you'll still get big pieces that will break it up sometimes, and it happens to me every year, and it's going to happen because it's gotten so much bigger again. On Sunday, like I'm making my last walk through the hall, and then all of a sudden I walk past a booth that I've not seen in the last 3 days, and gone, oh, that's where that is. I had no idea. So I'm sure that will occur again this year. So yeah. Lobster with Crabs says, what are they doing with their babies for the other days? Well, I think that Sunday is basically like a family day, and there's like a deal. So family day is generally is more local people who make the day trip in, go walk around, do stuff. They're they're not necessarily going to be there all 4 days. Yeah, because otherwise, what do they do? Just leave the kid in the hotel room? No, that's not nice. You can't do that. So Sunday is an influx of people who haven't been there the last 3 days, and then they bring their families with them, which is why Sunday is just completely like you're like this, and you can't get anywhere inside the dealer room. So that's kind of a problem. Wub did wub wub. Adam, can you wear a pedometer while visiting Gen Con? Data would be beautiful. That would be interesting. Because I have a Apple Watch here. I could turn the pedometer on that and find out like how many miles I went and all kinds of interesting information. I should do that because I don't usually ever use that feature on the watch, but I should do that. Kayla says I'll be running games for Paizo in the Sagamore Ballroom, Pathfinder, and Starfinder at Organized Play. The Pathfinder room, I walked into it 2015, and it is vertigo-inducing because it's such a big room. Like you walk into this room, like you know how like when you walk into really really big rooms, sometimes you're just like, God, this is huge because you're not used to walls being so far away and the ceiling being up so high and stuff like that. The room that Pathfinder happens in is like that. Yeah. Jesse Daniel says Family Day is for locals. Yeah, definitely. Melanie suggests that perhaps they could sell the kids so you can afford more stuff. I think that's technically illegal. Pretty sure. So there's that. Philip Rules says leave the kid in the stroller outside on all the other days. But you could probably, like, when you tie your dog up to go into a store real quick, you could do that. No, I don't think you could do that with kids. Kelly asks, how bad are food lines at these places? They're not great. But also, on the other hand, you spend $4 to $5 for soda. So you got that going for you. Yeah, it's, if you can, here's I'm going to just rant a little bit about Gen Con. If you want to go to Gen Con, it is very difficult because it's very difficult to get hotel rooms downtown. And you want a hotel room downtown because you want to be able to go back to the hotel room to be able to, get drinks, get snacks, not pay, $12 for nachos and stuff like that. You want to be able to go through that stuff and being able to, if you are staying at a hotel, it's much easier to get a hotel room out by the airport, but then it's like a half an hour taxi drive or whatever to get in and out every day. I've always wanted to be down near, especially when I was working for Beasts of War, I always needed to be downtown right away because I needed to be able to fill up my video card, walk back to the hotel room, transfer files, start sending them to Dropbox because they wanted the video files right away so they could make videos during the convention. So I had to constantly be dumping stuff into Dropbox. And then, of course, the hotel internet was terrible, but it was okay with Dropbox because Dropbox can kind of pick up where it leaves off, which is fine. So, but yeah, having to come from outside of like way out of downtown area is difficult, especially you're kind of just at the whim. There's plenty of places to eat around, and there's places to eat inside, but it's, if you try to go like a couple of blocks away from the convention center at a dinner time or lunchtime, good luck. You need to walk a lot further. The benefit, and here's a trick to Gen Con for those of you who might be going, gamers don't like to walk too far to eat. So if you just go that extra mile, not literally an extra mile, but if you do go an extra mile, you'll certainly be fine. You won't have any problems finding a place to eat. If you just walk far enough, you will get outside of the range of how far your average gamer wants to walk to get food, and then you won't have long lines at restaurants and long waits and things like that. So there's a little tip from your Uncle Adam. Alien Lover says it's terrible, but the mall that is connected to that has a large food court. That is true. There's a mall right nearby that's got a big food court, and there's an amazing Italian restaurant a short drive away. And yeah, there's a lot of great stuff around there. Like I like to go to, and I don't think we can see it on this map. Can we? Ah, over here. There's this place called Monument Circle. Um, there's a bunch of nice places in here that I like, and other stuff around there. And it's you know it's that this is probably it's probably half a mile to walk there, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. But yeah, it's not if you're leaving directly from the convention center. Yeah, if you're leaving from Lucas Oil, well then it's a good deal more walk. Somewhere around over here, there's a White Castle. At least there used to be. I don't know if there still is anymore. Um, I'm going to try not to go to the White Castle. I don't think. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Matt and I will go to the White Castle. By the way, moderator Matt and I are going to be attending Gen Con together, along with a whole bunch of other people. So you'll probably see pictures of moderator Matt and I doing stuff. Um, yes. So anyway, I'm going to be there doing. I'm going to be shooting video and images. So you'll want to be probably following me on Instagram or Facebook. Those images on Instagram will probably end up on Facebook as well. Um, but I'm also going to be doing some videos, and I'm going to be trying to put some videos up from the convention directly to YouTube and go from there. I'm going to be walking around with this, and I'm going to be shooting and doing, you know, just probably some kind of vlog type stuff where I'm holding it and talking a little bit. Probably not this close because all you'll see is nose, but that's my plan. I'm going to be trying to do some editing right there at the convention, and then uploading from there. Matthew Sears mentions that there is also an Arby's. Moderator Matt is wise. Wait, no. No, it's the opposite of wise. I'm not going to Arby's. That's not happening. So yeah, the thing about Gen Con is that it is all types of tabletop gaming. So like where Adepticon is wargaming, everything there is wargaming related. This is wargaming, role-playing games, CCGs, card games, and stuff like that, and board games. And the board games is probably probably the largest portion because board games have really become dominant. But and then there's tournaments. There's not a lot of like. Well, there's some tournaments for wargaming, but there's not a lot. There's way more at places like Nova Open, LVO, Las Vegas Open, Adepticon, you know, that kind of stuff. But there are some. So yeah, Rocket Pig Games says this is our first year. We cannot wait. And then it scrolled off the top a little bit. Cannot wait. Sounds like a great time. I'm worried to see what it's going to be like to park somewhere and get all our stuff in. I have no idea what to expect for that. If you have a booth at Gen Con, I would assume they would have sent you at some point information about loading and unloading because there's loading docks and stuff like that. Any big convention center's got huge loading docks, but I don't know really much about it. Back in the day when I had booths at Gen Con for my small little game company, and this is in the 90s, it was still in Milwaukee. So, and we would just carry our stuff in like our stuff was small. Let's just be perfectly honest. So we didn't have to worry about loading docks and things like that. So we just walked it in. But I don't know for other stuff. I'm not quite sure how that works. Zombie Boy asks, have we mentioned the Necromunda announcement and how bummed I am about my Armageddon campaign? I didn't know about your Armageddon campaign, but yes, we've talked about the Necromunda announcement. I have mentioned how confused I am by the fact that, that they're releasing Necromunda when they technically sort of kind of already released Necromunda earlier this year, and how that's really weird. But yeah, so that's in the previous parts of the video. I talked a good deal about it for a while, but evidently the stream died, so nobody heard that part, and I had to do it over again. So we'll see how all of this works. YouTube's being a little squirrely today, just FYI. I'm just going to call you WWW for a while, I think. How about that? What's wrong with Arby's? They put sugar on everything. All their meat, everything, their bread, everything has got sugar in it. And so that's my personal, I'm not a big fan. Anyway. Stalker 40K says, you might bump into Beasts of War again this year. Actually, I plan on it. I found out that, because I knew that Dawn and Gianna, who are their U.S. correspondents, I knew they were going to be there because they're always there. And I always talk to them as well at Adepticon and stuff like that. But I found out yesterday when I just happened to be watching The Weekender, which is the Saturday kind of chat show that Beasts of War does. I found out that two of the guys from Beasts of War, like two of the UK guys, are coming over. It's going to be Justin, who is the bald guy with the goatee, and then Ben, who he's not from Northern Ireland. He's from England, but he's coming in. He frequently does a lot of the posts and things like that. And if you watch the live show, or not the live show, if you watch the chat show they do on Saturdays, he's frequently on the television and not actually there in the studio. But yesterday he was in the studio because they're coming over here. So I reached out to Warren and said, hey, it'd be great to get together and talk to those guys and everything. And so we're working on some stuff. So I'll hopefully potentially maybe do a short little quick interview with them to see what they think about Gen Con, because as far as I know, it'll be both their first times for Gen Con. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And then I don't know, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think they're doing a meetup with their backstagers on Thursday at some point, but I don't know much about it. But if you so anyway, if you're going to Gen Con, I'm doing a meetup on Saturday at 7 p.m. at let me go to the thing with over here. I'm doing it. It's going to be over at this circle that I was talking about. Yes, Monument Circle. Over here, there is a sandwich shop called Potbelly. I'll put a little bit more information about it probably in this upcoming week about the actual address and stuff like that. But well, I think actually I've made an event on Facebook, so you should be able to find the information there. But that's where it's going to be, Saturday, 7 p.m. Get yourself a nice sandwich if you want to, or not, whatever. But I'll be there because I love the sandwiches from there, and people will hang out and we'll talk, and maybe we'll have to spill out into the monument depending on how many people show up. I don't know how many people are going to come. But that's where we're going to be doing a meetup, Saturday, 7 p.m. And if I can maybe trick Matt into it, maybe he'll come along, unless he's running an RPG session at that time. Matt's going to be there running the RPG version of Wreckage, and he's got a bunch of events. So I don't know, Matt, what your schedule is like. Clicking over here, back to me, and clicking over here. So, oh, Matt says, "Come murder us." So he must be preparing to be there, which I appreciate. That's good. We'll fight back to back if we have to. Let's see here. What else have we got? Tanswat says Armageddon was just the hype. Was just to get the hype for Necromunda going. Disappoint, then reward the masses. Means folk are extra keen for the release as they thought they were cheated earlier in the year. Well, I didn't feel like I was cheated. Like it used the Necromunda rules, which I like. It just didn't use the Necromunda models, which for me was okay because I already had models, which was fine. So, and it seems like an expensive thing to do to go through and produce an entire separate game to annoy people into buying a game you're going to release later in the year. Again, I'm not a business guy, but it seems like that's probably not the way they want to go. We'll see how it goes. Attendees will get mad if you and your friends start to play football on the field. Yeah, no, that's very true. And probably the staff would get mad too. A lot of people would get mad, most likely. So, yeah. Matt, people are asking, where can I get that sweet, sweet Wreckage? You should put the link there. I believe it is www.rec-age.net. But don't quote me on that. Matt can tell you. Adam, do you have Frostgrave Cultist models? Are they good? Yeah, they are good. I like them. I have the soldiers. So 2 years ago at Adepticon 2016 is when I think right around when they first released the soldiers and the cultists. So I had not even heard that they were going to be doing that, and I was just walked by the Frostgrave booth, and I was like, these are awesome. So I bought them because they were super cheap too. You got like 20 guys for $31 or $32, I think, at the time. So I bought both of those. Then they came out with Barbarians, which are also super cool. They're not like when I hear Barbarians, I think Conan the Barbarian, but they're not. They're more like the Wildlings from like Game of Thrones. Like they're all covered in furs, basically. They're not like bare chested with a giant sword. They're more like covered in furs and stuff. And those are also great models. And then they came out with the fourth plastic kit, which are Gnolls or Kobolds. I think Gnolls. I haven't bought those because I don't know. I looked at the models and I'm like, they're cool, but eh. But yeah, so those are really great models. I did receive, I don't have it within arm's reach, I did receive a copy from Osprey last week of their new game, Dracula's America. I've talked about it a little bit before in the social media, and I think I've talked about it on the live show here. But basically, it's a small skirmish game, takes place alternate history, kind of Wild West, sort of. But the story is that Dracula flees Europe, comes to America. He and his minions kill Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, who is president, and then he dominates the Senate with his like, kind of Dracula powers, and then they vote him president for life. So now Dracula runs America, and so it's a game of like post Civil War kind of Wild Westish stuff, but there's also cults and werewolves and vampires and all kinds of shenanigans, going on at the same time. And I mean, the storyline and the artwork and all the stuff that I've flipped through the book looks amazing. I have not gotten a good chance to sit down and read the rules. I'm really hoping to play a demo at at Gen Con, but I also want to read through the rules before I get there. So yeah, I think that's going to be cool. Legionnaire says, I want the gnolls and the cultists. Yeah, I haven't figured out a great use for the gnolls. I may still pick up a box, but the cultists are super awesome, and so are the soldiers and the barbarians. The barbarians, actually, what I want to do is I want to kit bash them and give them like regular weapons, like like modern day like AK-47s and stuff like that. I'm going to do a video about kit bashing, and that's one of the things I'm going to show in that video, so that'll be cool. The new painter likes my Dracula sound. That's how you do it. Jay Tick, who I will also be at Gen Con with, and who is the mastermind behind getting us an actual hotel room. Thank God, and thank Jay. Who's ready for some overweight cosplay? Gen Con, baby. Yeah, there's a lot of cosplay that goes there, and there's a lot of, I mean, I'm not a cosplayer. I'm not super into it. I see a lot of creativity in it, and that's really cool. And people are enjoying themselves, and it's fine. But I do remember the one time back when it was still in Milwaukee, when my wife and I went to Gen Con together, when it was still in Milwaukee. This is 2001 or 2, I think. 2002, it must have been. Yeah, I think it was probably still 2002. It was one of the last ones in Milwaukee. We were going up an escalator, and we were behind a guy in a Spider-Man outfit. And you can't hide much in a Spider-Man cosplay. It's pretty, you gotta be buff. Otherwise, you don't look like Spider-Man, frankly. And this guy, didn't particularly look like Spider-Man. And we're just going. The guy, he was several. He was quite a ways up. And my wife just sort of leaned to me and she's like, Spider-Man's got a big can, and that still sticks to me today. So yeah, it's kind of funny. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Emperor Richard says, hey, where's Gen Con? Well, he didn't say hey, I put in the hey. Gen Con is in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I can do this, and then I can do that. So yeah, that's the Gen Con website. Gen Con 50, Indianapolis. It'll be the 50th Gen Con in a row. I was at the 25th, which I mentioned earlier. And so I have this red, I posted a picture of it earlier in the year because I just finally came across it, and I have this big red six-sider that's like a commemorative, 25th anniversary Gen Con one. It's got a dragon on it and 25 and all that stuff. And I'm hoping that somebody makes something like that for the 50th year, because then I want to be able to put them together, maybe put them like a little get crafty, put them in a shadow box or something like that. That'd be a hoot. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure there's going to be lots and lots of commemorative. I've already seen some companies are like making dice bags, and there's all kinds of commemorative stuff. The company that I buy my Fezes from, they've got a special commemorative limited edition Fez this year. Don't know that I'm going to get that, but we'll see how that goes. So yeah. What's the Dracula game called? It's called Dracula's America. It's made by Osprey Games, the guys who make Frostgrave. There's also a whole bunch of models as well that they'll be releasing too, or they have released already actually. Most of them are metal, but I don't know if they'll be making plastics or not. I'm going to be receiving some of the models from Osprey at some point soon. They said they were going to send me some, so that's pretty cool. Gaddis Gaming says, I'll see you guys at Gen Con. I'm looking forward to it. That'll be cool. Excuse me. Plus size Space Marines for the win. Well, yeah. I mean, so that's the thing. Like, I could wear Space Marine armor and it would be fine. I mean, sort of. You know, I wouldn't look. I don't think it because it's bulky enough. My kind of tubbiness would be hidden. Um, but yeah, you would not catch me in a Spider-Man outfit. I'll tell you that right now, or like Deadpool or any of that stuff. That takes a lot of guts, in my opinion. So, Fez Gang representing. Someone said yes. I do plan on probably buying another Fez. I don't know if I'm going to buy the commemorative 50th one, but I do plan on getting probably a third Fez. No commemorative kilt, not that I know of. Yeah, probably not. Question: I'm going to the Nova GT this year, my first GT ever. Is Gen Con similar? Should I be going to it instead for my budget for next year? Okay, so the Nova GT is basically a big miniatures convention. Well, it's a big miniatures tournament. The GT stands for Grand Tournament, evidently. So, um, I don't know what the size of Nova is. I know Adepticon, which is just about wargaming and is awesome. Adepticon is about 4,000 people. Excuse me. Gen Con this year is going to be probably 70,000 people over 4 days. Gen Con is all tabletop gaming, whereas Nova is predominantly just wargaming. Adepticon is predominantly just wargaming. Las Vegas Open is just basically, wargaming. So the wargaming stuff, like I love Adepticon. If you're going to make a choice between going to Gen Con, I would tell you that really, instead of going to Gen Con, I think all tabletop gamers should try to, once in their life, make a pilgrimage to Gen Con if you can. It's getting harder and harder to get to Gen Con because there's so many people and there's only so many hotel rooms and all that jazz. That all being said, I would tell you to go to Adepticon because you can fly into O'Hare. It's a much easier hub to get into sometimes. Um, it's just about wargaming. It's a great laid back but fun convention. There's plenty of tournaments if you're into that. There's plenty of seminars and stuff about painting and all that kind and sculpting and all kinds of stuff if you're into that. Some of the best paint jobs in the world are there for the crystal brush. I'd tell you to go to Adepticon, honestly, if you have to make a choice. So, what else have we got? Hey, Engineer Jeff is here. Let's see here. Sprue tooling costs thousands of dollars. Small companies got to go pewter. I like. There's certain metal models that I do like. Like I don't like I was talking before. I don't like the Infinity ones because there's like so many pieces to so many of the different models. Um, I like the metal models that I see out of like Ospreys are not bad, um, honestly. And you're gonna call me a favoritist, but I really like the metal models that come out of Wreckage, Hyacinth Games, which is moderator Matt's company. I've painted a bunch and I really like them. Um, I like some of the older GW metals too, but well, older but not too old. If you go way back, those look like a thumb in very many situations. But like the ones from like the early 2000s, those are great. Like a bunch of like the metal plague marines, all of them I love. Um, so yeah, it's I don't know. Most metal, well, that's not true. Actually, I guess I like it's 50-50 for me. There's a bunch of metal lines that I like, and then there's Infinity and a couple others where there's like I don't like most of the metal models that came out of Privateer Press. Like a lot of the War Machine, like I had to put together those friggin' Kador jacks, and they were a hot mess. And so yeah, it depends on the company, definitely. Let's see here. Ryan Duncan says and then everything moved. Sorry. Philip Rules just called me a favoritist, so that's cool. Like I said, you guys were gonna do it. Um, well, let's see here. Volunteering is awesome. Trust me. That's also a good point. There is volunteering that you can do for Gen Con if you want to go and have it be cheaper. Um, Nova Open was about 1,500 last year, says Frankie Lee Bailey. So that's 1,500 versus 70,000. Just you can kind of make your own decisions from there. But I was trying to catch where the Ryan Duncan says just got back into the game. Have the old size Space Marines. Will it look silly to use them since there are new models out? Your mileage may vary. I don't think so. I'm probably going to mix Primaris guys with some old guys. Just in my mind, like the older guys who are smaller are going to be like, these new guys are trying to get all up in our business. You know, like they're all in the same chapter, but they're like sort of like there's rivalry and whatever. That's just going to go on in my head while I play. But yeah, I don't have a problem mixing the sizes. Some people are like, oh, I only want to go big now, or I only want to stay small, or whatever, and that's fine. I have no problem mixing them. So it's up to you, really. Jesse Daniel says, I bet it's going to be closer to 80 to 100,000. Gosh, that seems really huge. If it jumped from 60,000 last year to 100,000 this year, that would be sort of crazy. Now, I could be wrong, certainly, but like from a couple of places I've read, they've said they've been guessing it's going to be closer to 70,000. So that'll be pretty interesting. Let's see here. Gen Con is the pilgrimage. Yes, that's very true. Gen Con's benefit, it's in the summer. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, schools are still out generally, so if you want to bring kids, it's a little bit easier. But sometimes summer in Indianapolis can be brutal. So, yeah. Um, so there's that. Does Nova have a sales floor? That I don't know. Um, Scott says I'm true scaling an entire chapter of Salamanders. Well, that'll be interesting. Um, yeah, that'll be interesting. Over the last 5 years or so, the hotel situation at Gen Con has gotten pretty dicey, according to Jacob Davis. That's true. Gen Con's. So the way it works now is that it's a lottery. So you buy your tickets, you know, ahead of time or whatever, and then on a certain date, they go through, and everybody who's bought a ticket already gets a date and time. And so the earliest possible date is like it's a Sunday at like noon Central, I think, or something like that. So that's the very earliest time that you could buy hotels within the block, within the Gen Con block. Um, and so that not everybody tries to call at once, they just basically give you a link that says, "Hey, you'll be able to start buying tickets at 5 o'clock on Sunday." So even if you're right there ready to go at noon, you won't be able to buy tickets until 5 because that's the lottery you got. Or maybe it's 8 o'clock, or maybe it's the next day, or whatever. And by that point, all the good hotel rooms are probably going to be gone. So it used to be a situation where everybody tried to get there at the same time and just hammer on the website to try to get in so that they could buy the tickets or the hotel rooms they wanted. Now everybody just gets told this is when it's going to happen, and then it's a total lottery. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And well, that's what they've been doing, and it's kind of weird. Um, Generic Villain asks, "Hey Uncle Adam, I'm considering getting a board for home and need some terrain. Any recommendations? I pretty much just play 40K." Um, that's a good question. I would tell you probably to if you want to buy stuff, you know, like Games Workshop's like ruined city stuff, Cities of Death is what a lot of people still call it. If you can find it, it's still pretty reasonably priced. You're spending between, you know, 30, 35, maybe $40 per kit, and they're very modular. They can be put together in a lot of different ways. If you want to build your own terrain, there's a lot of tutorials out there for building, you know, like foam core, you know, ruins and things like that. You could go that direction. Um, you can use that pink insulation foam that people put on the outside of their houses in the Midwest because it keeps the death winter out. If you can get that kind of stuff in your local do-it-yourself stores or Home Depot or whatever, you can kind of mold it and cut it, you know, with a knife and make like hills and rocky crags and stuff like that. It depends on what you want to do. You know, I mean, you would want to try to not. I mean, like usually you wouldn't have a bunch of city terrain on like a desert board. You wouldn't think because like why is there a city in the middle of the desert? But if you do it right, maybe there didn't used to be a desert here, and the desert came in because of ecological collapse or whatever, you know. So the best thing I find to making a good looking board is to have it be thematic. Have it, you know, don't just be like, well, here's a mat that I own. I've laid that down. Here's a bunch of junk that I've put on the table that doesn't match. If you want it to look cool and really be immersive, you want the stuff to at least be all the same theme. You know what I mean? If you have like a deserty kind of board that you lay down, then you can, you know, throw down a bunch of deserty hills and maybe deserty like rock columns or you know like a military base that used to be in the desert and is now all ruined or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of different things like that. Matthew Sears, Moderator Matt, says make terrain on CDRs, CDs basically, like old CDs. Back when you used to get like, software on CDs. If you put them on a CD, one of the upsides, A lot of times you want to put your terrain on a base. And if you use cardboard, it will probably warp, which will then you'll set your thing down on the table and then the sides will stick up and it'll look screwy. Um, if you use MDF, even MDF, if it's thin enough and you put enough paint and glue on it, will still warp very frequently. But if you use a CD, like an old CD that you're not using anymore, or an old burned CD or something like that, they won't really warp. So you can glue all kinds of stuff to them, and they won't really warp. Another thing is also some people, if you're serious about it and you don't mind spending a little bit more money and you can find it on sale, you can buy plexiglass or acrylic and then use that as the base because that stuff will not warp. I keep an eye out on our local like hot hardware stores because every once in a while they'll have sales. I picked up a bunch of acrylic once that was 20% off. So I bought a bunch of acrylic sheets and I've been going through and cutting with a Dremel and making some bases and things like that. And those things, once you paint over them, you can't tell it's acrylic. You know what I mean? So that's fine, but they will not warp because it's acrylic. Is it worth playing Armageddon when I don't even know how to play 40K, or is it better to just start with Armageddon? Well, here's the deal. I would wait a little bit to find out what the rules are going to be like for Necromunda because Armageddon, Shadow War Armageddon, is using basically the rule set that Necromunda used to use back in the day, which were slightly modified second edition 40K rules. We're now on 8th edition 40K, and the rumors that some people are saying is that the new Necromunda is not going to use the old rules from Shadow War, but it's going to use a new version of the 8th edition rules, slightly modified, maybe simplified, or something like that. So if you're interested in getting into 40K, maybe Necromunda is the nice step. They're not that different, Shadow War and 40K as it stands now, that you'll be like, I don't know what the heck's going on. But there's a lot of difference. There's just not a complete difference. So I would wait a little bit, see what the rules are going to look like for Necromunda, because maybe the Necromunda is the step you want to make before you go into 40K. It's hard to say. The 40K rules, the main core rules, are a free PDF you can get off of the Warhammer community website, so you can go check it out from there and see how that goes. So yeah. Alexander Guest says there are ways around MDF warping. That's true. There are people who will put, because you put glue, let's say, on the top of your MDF because you want to sprinkle sand and junk on top of it. And then there are people that will then like either paint the underside or even put glue on the underside. And basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to offset this warping with the bottom warping so that they fight against each other and then hopefully stay flat. My concern is that one side might win a little bit, so then you're either going to have a base that sticks up a little bit in the middle, or it's going to be, again, the edges are going to pop up. If you don't get it exact, it's still going to be a little meh, which is why I prefer if I'm building something and I'm trying to be like, it's something I want to have for a long time and I've got the stuff available, I like to use the acrylic, but it's harder. I mean, like glue does not stick to acrylic as easily, like regular like PVA glue, so then you end up having to stick down like sand, things like that, more with CA glue, and then you've got to use a lot more CA glue than you would usually use because you're trying to glue something this big as opposed to like a little, like a little base. Like when I put my, what do you call it? When I put baking soda and stuff like that on basing to make it so that I can make a nice little base, a lot of people are like, well, you're using so much CA glue. I'm like, it's like $6 a bottle and it's lasts me for months. But if you're using bases that are this big because it's pieces of terrain, well, then you're going to use a lot more CA glue. So, but if you do it really well the first time, you're going to have this piece of terrain for years, 20 years, Philip says that foamcore is his favorite music genre. Yeah, I've listened to foamcore for years. It's great. Adam, how much time do you still intend to spend playing AOS now that 40K is out? Do you prefer one over the other? I like to play them both. Like, I plan on doing a battle report on AOS once I get my battle reports started up after Gen Con. I've got a couple of friends that I still play Age of Sigmar with. I've got other friends I play 40K with. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I still like Age of Sigmar. I went to that event a couple weeks ago that I talked about in the last live show, and I brought my Age of Sigmar stuff along, but I only ended up playing a game of 40K because I found an opponent at the time. The other guys who were there to play Age of Sigmar were playing the Batman miniatures game or something, so we just didn't. It wasn't like a scheduled thing. It was sort of freeform ad hoc. So I had a good time with that, but I brought stuff to play. So yeah, I still do like it. I want to get my, like I said, I want to get my Terrorgeist done for my Death Army, and I need to get more skeletons done. Um, it, it's difficult. Like if you only ever focus on just one game, you can get a lot more done because all your effort goes into just one title. But then there's times when you're like, oh, you want to play a game, and then people are like, I don't play that game, or whatever. So and plus just my interest, and because of the channel, I want to kind of stick my finger into more pies. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of it's you ruin pies that way actually if you do that. But you see where I'm going with that. Adam, what made you choose Black Templars, and how do you feel about Ultramarines? Well, I'm actually not. So originally I was going to go with Black Templar, and then I decided against it because I, when I first thought about going with Black Templar, it was back when the Black Templars still had their own codex, and then the new Space Marine Codex came out, and this is 5 years ago. And then it said, oh, yeah, by the way, we're not going to be having the Black Templar in their own book anymore. We're going to fold them in. This was the last Space Marine Codex that was in 6th edition, I think. So I was like, oh, man. So, but I'd already built a whole bunch of stuff with the Black Templar shoulder pads and the crosses all over the place. So I thought, well, I'll just make my own chapter and then use Ultramarines chapter tactics because I liked their chapter tactics better. So technically, my army, when I finish painting it, will be called Steel Cross, but they will be like a kind of a slightly darker blue, not Night Lord's blue, but not quite as bright as I don't think as Ultramarines. But they'll have silver shoulder pads, which will be like the rims will be very silver, and it will be a dark, dark, dark silver in the middle parts of the shoulder pads. But a lot of them will have the crosses, on their vehicles and all kinds of stuff like that. But I'll probably be still using, even now with a new book that just came out, I'll probably still be using, I think, Ultramarine chapter tactics. Uh, I don't really have a, I don't really, I don't know. I know some people piss and moan about the Ultramarines. I have no problem with the fact that they seem to be the poster boys for Games Workshop. That's fine. If you don't want to play them, don't. Just it's the same with anything, so definitely. Stuff Tube says, I will totally ditch my Age of Sigmar to get Necromunda stuff. I have Rune Wars on now anyhow. I own Rune Wars, the box set, but because it came, like, basically, it came with swag bag for Adepticon, so I've got the Rune Wars, but I haven't really opened it yet. I've watched some battle reports of it, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. Well, I like the models. I like the undead models, specifically. A good deal. They're interesting in kind of a slightly cartoony way, but yeah. But I don't, yeah, I don't know. I just don't, I don't like the rank and flank. I don't like the movement trays and stuff like that, so that's not for me. But people who like that kind of thing obviously miss 8th edition fantasy, so that's why I can see it makes sense. If you liked 8th edition fantasy and you just were playing Age of Sigmar because you had the models anyway, and now Rune Wars is out, and you want to move to that, that's cool. But I don't know. Maybe I'll be able to get another demo of it in at Gen Con. I had a demo of it at that distributor conference that I did back in May, late May, and I got the gist of the game, but I don't know. It's not necessarily for me. We'll see how it goes. Oh, for the love of God. So it stopped again, huh? Why? Is it working? Anyone know? Just waiting to see if it comes back. It says that it's not receiving data from my encoder, but anyone? Hello? just kind of waiting to see if it comes back. You guys let me know if it comes back. It's back. Wait. No. Anyone? Still says it's not receiving data from my encoder. Why? What is the friggin' problem? I got internet. If anyone can see this, I've got plenty of internet. I mean, my upload's not awesome, let's be perfectly honest. It should be 5, but... Anyone? Oh, it says that I have good now. Is it coming back? Hello? Hello? Oops, clunk. Something? Hello? Can you guys hear the crickets? Is it working? But I can't type. Anyone? Hello? Ah, evident. That's weird. All I did was nothing. It just sat here and had to wait until I got my stuff back, or I don't know what happened. Anyway, what was I talking about? Rune Wars, evidently. It's not exactly for me. I like the undead dudes; they're cool, but I don't like rank and flank, so it's not my it's not my jam, frankly. So yeah, that is not a killer robot. That's right there. That's my wife's cello case. But one of these days, I am going to put some googly eyes on it, but she won't like it. Maybe I'll put a hat on it. I could put a hat on it. See, it's interesting. Like, I can never tell when the stream drops because the view that I'm seeing right now is from seriously like 20 minutes ago. I don't know what's going on with YouTube today. It's wackadoo. Because I did a test, a speed test with the app, and well, now it's gone. But it was saying I was getting 70 megabits down or whatever, and like 4 up. Usually I get 5, but I guess it maybe slowed down probably because I was actually still streaming. It just wasn't going anywhere once it got to YouTube. So there you go. What else have we got here? Do. Random warp storm interference. Well, random YouTube interference. Um, AOS has no players here, which is my problem. Yeah, I mean, we still have some. I mean, well, we certainly still have some, and we're going to probably see people. A lot of people kind of, not a lot. Some people jumped bandwagon over to 40K when 8th edition came out. Other people who had never really been into it were like, well, I'm not really into it, and so I'm going to keep playing Age of Sigmar. And now that they're coming out with the what do you call it, the new General's Handbook for 2017, which I'm hoping will be the same price as the old General's Handbook, because if it's like more expensive, that's going to stink. So I'm hoping it's like 25 bucks like the other one, and has a bunch of new stuff and information in it. And if they do that once a year, that's not terrible. But yeah, we'll see. Like I said, I still like Age of Sigmar quite a bit, and yeah, I've still got to get my Death Army figured out. Yes, this YouTubery has been flummoxing me. Dan Hughes says, I quite enjoy Rune Wars, but I'm worried I see no buzz about it, so I wonder if it'll survive. Yeah, that's a good question because like if a small company had come out with that game, I'd be like, I don't know. But Fantasy Flight is well slash Asmodee now is pretty huge, so you would think that I don't know. It's interesting. It's like I see them doing some sponsored content here and there. I know they're doing some sponsored content. I know they're pushing it. I know they've come up with a lot of expansions. I don't know. I honestly think that Fantasy Flight's customer base, player base, is not that interested in unpainted miniatures that they have to paint themselves, and I think that's where you're seeing some of it. I know I've seen people painting them, and it's not super hard to do. You can use like army painter stuff and the dip and all that jazz, and you can crank through them really quick. If you go back to like May in my social feed, I had a bunch of pictures actually from the army painter booth. They had painted a bunch of the skeletons, and I was really impressed by how well they did so quickly. It was just like step one we did this, step two we did this, and all that, and then the dip and boom. Um, so you can do it, but I do wonder if like because the Star Wars people were not jumping ship, I don't think to Rune Wars because the Star Wars people, a lot of them were like, I'm playing X-wing because it's already painted. So when they first announced at 2016 Gen Con, when they first announced Rune Wars, a lot of people thought it was going to be pre-painted because X-wing was. So why wouldn't it be? And then when it wasn't, they were like, oh. And so I know people who were interested when they found out it wasn't pre-painted became uninterested. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it works. Boop boop badoo. Oh, what have I got here going on there? Hey, what is the game that has the small boats that fight? Uh, Maybe Sails of Glory. Sails of Glory is a game where it is basically fighting ships. It's been made by the same people who made Wings of Glory, which was basically Wings of War in the old days, and it's made by Nexus? I don't know. Ares? I don't know. It's made by some company from not around here. I think they're possibly a European company. But yeah, so Wings of Glory might be the game if you're talking about like boat type ships. Um, or you could be talking about Dreadfleet, or you could be talking about Pirates of the Spanish Main, which were little ships that you popped out of like little credit card shapes and then put them together yourself. Those were kind of cool. Those are kind of older. Sturmhawk, will the new Age of Sigmar's General's Handbook make the current one redundant, or will it be still be relevant? I don't know. I think that if there's points changes, that'll make the old one redundant because there'll be points updates. Um, but I think that like the campaign stuff and the you know scenarios and all that jazz in the old book you can still use in the new book. It's from what I understand, it's going to come out with new scenarios and new other things and new optional rules, plus also a points refresh. So I don't think you need to throw away your old book because you'll still be able to play those missions and all that cool stuff, and this will be new stuff on top of it, and then like corrected points, you know, because they may have well, they've added new new models to the line, so they want to be able to put the points in there like that, and then also maybe some of those that would maybe wiggle the points a little bit, like well these guys were 300, but maybe they should be 320 or whatever, you know. So I get the feeling it'll do that. So yeah. Um, have you mentioned the Necromunda announcement? Yes, yes, I have. I kind of talked about that early on. The It'll be interesting to see when we find out more information. Right now, all we know is that they're going to be making some plastic multi-part models, and that we'll find out more soon. That's pretty much about it right now. Emperor Richard asks, "What do you think about bolt action?" Bolt action, I'm more interested, frankly, in Conflict 47, and I hope to play that someday soon. I've got a bunch of stuff for Conflict 47. I just haven't built it. So, yeah. I do not play bolt action. I have read the book for Conflict 47, which is basically a slightly different version of bolt action, but I don't play it. I played Flames of War in third edition quite a bit. I haven't tried fourth edition yet, but I still got my tanks and stuff like that. So, Generic Villain says, "Will you be getting into Necromunda and/or Adeptus Titanicus when they release?" I can tell you, not on Adeptus Titanicus. I don't think. I never played Epic or any of that kind of stuff back in the day, so I don't know that that's my jam. Necromunda, we'll see. Like, I like Shadow War Armageddon right now, so we'll see how it goes. I don't know anything more about Necromunda right now than you guys do, so who knows what'll come out of that. I know that they said that there's supposed to be more news coming from Forge World Open, not Forge World World. And maybe we'll find out more in the next coming days. I have a suspicion they'll probably talk about it maybe pretty heavily at Gen Con. I've got a meeting with Games Workshop actually on Thursday at Gen Con, so I'm looking forward to talking to probably Eddie, but maybe some other guys there too. So that'll be kind of neat. Todd asks, "Have you played any of the Walking Dead All Out War yet?" I haven't played it. At the Tabletop Minions Expo back in June, there were some guys from Chicago, some really nice dudes from Chicago, who ran it and had a really nice looking board, very kind of jungle themed, and it was really cool. And I know there was probably 4 or 5 guys I think that played when I was watching at one point, so I got to watch it a little bit, but I didn't play. Um, it's an interesting concept, and it looks like there's some sort of interesting tools to the game, like like where the sound's coming from, and like are you making too much noise over here, which then causes the zombies to move over there, and that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. I'll probably take a look at it. I may talk to Ronnie at Gen Con, actually. Ronnie Renton, who's the president at Mantic, who makes the Walking Dead games. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know. It's an interesting concept, I think, definitely. Colin asks, "What do you think of the new Death Guard models?" I like some, and I don't like some of the others. Like the Plague drone, Plague, whatever the heck, no, Blight drone, the fetid Blight drone that came in the starter box, I think is awesome. And I painted one for my Chaos Army. I posted pictures in the Tabletop Minions Showcase Club a while back, a week or so ago, maybe more. And I really like that model a lot. The Lord of Contagion, is okay. I painted my Typhus instead because Typhus has got better stats, frankly, and is a cheaper model to take in the game. Like, he's got more stuff going on. He's a psyker. He's got a lot of things going on, yet he costs like 30 points less. And I don't understand that, and they didn't fix it in the most recent FAQ, so I don't know. I have a suspicion that when the Death Guard books come out, the actual Death Guard book comes out, the Codex, maybe all of that will be revealed and things will be fixed. But for right now, yeah, I like Typhus a little bit better. There's a couple of those models, like there's the guy, and I can't think of the name of him, but he's kind of shooting out, like he's more of the wizardy type guy, and he's shooting stuff out of his hand. That model I don't like very much at all. I don't know. I've seen some pictures of the new Mortarion model, the big, huge Primarch Mortarion of the Death Guard. And yeah, I don't know that I like that model. I don't know. Like, I love a lot of the Age of Sigmar Nurgle stuff, but some of the newer stuff is just not doing. I just don't like it that much. So, will be interesting. I recently heard that a D&D style 40k RPG is being developed. That might be fun. Yeah, I did see some a little bit of here and there talking about a new 40k RPG. That'll be interesting. I should look into it more. I mean, I don't really play RPGs anymore, but yeah. Question: does anyone know or have a link for a really good paint conversion chart that might have even some normal acrylics like you would buy at Hobby Chest or Walmart? I don't know of any specifically. Like, this color is this color, and I don't know that they would be super accurate generally either. I know there's an app called Paint Rack, which I think is only still for Android. And I've heard some people say that there's conversion stuff in there, but I don't know how true that is. But that's all. That's the best I got. Matthew says that there's already a 40k RPG by Fantasy Flight Games, and that's true. But I think they lost their license now that they're not pals anymore. So there's something new. I have seen pictures of some sort of new RPG coming out that's 40k based, but I don't even know who's making it. So yeah. Giovanni says Wrath and Glory is the RPG. Well, that's interesting. Question: it seems like you prefer to rattle can prime and paint more than airbrush. Is that a fair assumption? There are certain models that, if it's a nice day out, I prefer to rattle can sometimes. I generally prefer to rattle can terrain, almost always. Of course, there's times when you're in the middle of winter and you're trying to build a piece of terrain, so you can't do that. Models, I still generally usually prefer to airbrush, but like I just recently did 2 Hellbrutes, and I used rattle can on them. But it was because I know what color I want them to be, and they're going to be Nurgle, and they're going to be kind of a green-based color, so I went with the green-based camo Krylon. And it was just a great day, and I wanted to be outside anyway, so I used that instead. Otherwise, I would have had to have probably used like an olive drab Vallejo airbrush primer, surface primer they call it, and I would have had to use that and then go from there. In this situation, what I did was I used the rattle can stuff because it was a nice day, wasn't too humid, wasn't too hot, wasn't too windy, and I did them real quickly, and then I brought them in the house and did highlighting with the airbrush. So I don't know, it depends. On regular sized models, I almost very frequently prefer to use airbrush, but on terrain, I generally like to use rattle can. It depends, you know. The upside to using the Krylon stuff with fusion technology that they call it is that it sticks really super well to plastic. It sticks better than an airbrush primer does. I think hence the term why they call it fusion, because it fuses to the plastic. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I've got a little bit of an allergy that's kicking in. I apologize. I'm going to just turn this microphone off for just a second. You can still hear that, can't you? Are we... Hang on a second. See, that's the problem, I bet. Someone earlier said that it sounded weird, and I bet that this microphone's not even currently on. I bet it's... Where's the sound? I don't freaking... I'll have to fix it later. There was a big update to the software again just before I brought up the show this morning, so maybe that's what's causing the problems with YouTube. I don't know. I need to evidently stream more to keep up with all of the constant updates and changes because technically doing this should make it so that there's no audio, but I see that the levels are still bouncing when I talk. That shouldn't happen. Yeah, you guys hear that. I get that. So it's got to be probably picking up from someplace else. Where else could there be a microphone? Nope. Nope. I don't know. I'll figure it out later on. Martin the Warrior says, I'm super hyped for the Necromunda. Really looking forward to seeing the gang models. If they are the same standard as the new Blood Bowl minis, they will be amazing. The new Blood Bowl minis are pretty crazy. I will give you that. Yeah, I mean, I suspect the models will be great. Don't get me wrong. Um, Douglas Hooker says, does Krylon strip well, seeing as it fuses so well? I've not really been able to strip it, but because it's usually the first layer, I don't generally need to. Like, if you were going to take a model that had already had, like, a black Krylon fusion on it, and you wanted to strip it down to bare plastic so that you could then go back and hit it with, like, a light color to do something else, then you're probably going to have a bad time. You're going to probably want to do something else with that. But yeah. So yeah, we'll see how that works out. It was the mic on the camera, I think. So if I tap, yeah, and this one might be currently turned on. I don't know why that changes sometimes from week to week. I haven't touched anything that make anything different here. Anyway. The models on the Warhammer community look amazing. I'm assuming you're talking about the Necromunda ones. Those are pretty cool. So I'm being told that it's the one up here. Dude, the sound is fine. I like it to be coming out of the good microphone. I think it sounds better. This one sounds a little reverby. There's a little bit of sound reflection to it when I, just the talking and stuff like that. When I go back and listen to it, I want the sound to be better. So that's why I generally like to use this mic, but sometimes XSplit decides to just change and use a different mic, which is not super helpful. Daniel's got some news for us. That's good. The new 40k RPG is called Wrath and Glory, which I think I vaguely remember. It's a D6 dice pool system set in current lore, made by Ulysses North America. Or Ulysses. I've never heard of them. That's interesting. Huh. Huh. Calvin says, I will settle for Orlocks and Vansars, though. Again, Necromunda gangs, for those of you who are not up to date on that stuff. They didn't show any pictures of the Orlocks and Vansars, but I'm sure they're probably coming. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't be. So, yeah, definitely. Have you heard of IQ-28, otherwise known as Inquisitor 28mm? Yes, I've heard of it. I believe it's like a fan-designed kind of thing. But I don't know a ton about it, frankly. So, yeah, but it's basically kind of like, there was an Inquisitor game years ago, but it was 54mm that Games Workshop tried to do. So the models were all twice as tall as a normal 28mm, and people were like, "Huh, it was kind of skirmish based, and that was cool, but it didn't take off because, well, for one thing, one of the downsides to changing your scale like that is that now I have to go build all new terrain, which stinks, and a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to go buy all new terrain, or whatever, because, buildings are going to look weird. You're going to look like a giant walking around next to the buildings designed for 28mm figures, so that's kind of problematic. Shadow War was GW testing the waters, I'll bet. Yeah, someone said that before, too. It just seems like a weird way to do it, to completely make a whole new product. I mean, I guess really, if you sit down and look at it, they made terrain for Shadow War, which they could technically easily sell for Necromunda as well. There's no reason they couldn't. And then they made a book. They didn't make any new models and stuff like that. But it does seem odd they would do that and then probably in the same year. Because again, we don't know about Necromunda. We don't know whether that game's even coming out in 2017. They just announced it, but it might not come out till 2018. It might come out just before Christmas 2017. Hard to say. That we don't know yet. So we'll see how it goes. Martin says, "Oh my God! I just looked at the Warhammer community site. The Goliaths are bloody badass. Okay, I got to start saving up now." Yes, I was showing them before. Here. So, yeah, for those of you, these are the Eschers from House Escher. They're gangers. This guy's got very pointy hair and a big gun. They didn't drill the barrels? Are they crazy? Come on. You go through all this trouble to paint zebra stripes and stuff on the loincloth and you didn't drill the barrels? My goodness. Um, and then these guys are Goliaths, who are very large, evidently. I'm assuming that they must work out. Um, and this guy too. I like that gun a lot, actually. It's kind of cool. I do see a lot of rust effects being a potential in this kind of game. I mean, this is about as close, almost, as Games Workshop gets to post-apocalyptic at this point. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know. This is kind of a cool cover. Like this is like it's kind of like the Imperial Eagle, but it's also kind of like a skull. You see that? Like they showed this off last week, and everyone was like, "I don't know what that's for." And they're like, "Well, yeah, that's the point." It was a teaser, but yeah. Again, like I said, I don't know if this is supposed to be the cover of the book or not because it does say. I can't get up there. I can't scroll up to that part. Anyway, you'll notice here it says Warhammer Community up there. So I don't know if they're just marking it so that people don't steal the image or they know where it comes from, or is this a product that's only like I don't know? Is this a PDF that's going to come out of Warhammer Community? Nobody knows yet. They haven't really said other than the fact that it's going to be plastic models, and that's about all they've really said. So anyway, Melanie is very excited for the Eschers, which is good. I'm glad that I mean a lot of people when Shadow War came out, Shadow War Armageddon, which was basically Necromunda, a lot of people who had played it in the past were like, but my gangers, though, I like the gangers, I like the gang guys. I don't want to use orcs and necrons. I want to use the gang people, the Eschers and the Orlocks and all that stuff. So I just assumed at some point they were just going to release new gangs, whether it was going to be plastic kits or even if it was just going to be Forge World. So this is sort of weird to me that they're saying that Forge World is saying there's going to be plastic kits, and it's a whole new day over at Games Workshop, which is cool. You know, I'm glad they're doing things that are a little different these days. So definitely. Gale Force 9 game, Tanks. Is it really simplified and fun to play? Not a World War II simulator, but such a great game. I play with the card terrain because I don't want to pay for 15mm terrain. I play mostly 28mm. I own the starter box. I traded a guy for it, actually, at a convention, or it was at the distributor conference. He had a copy of it, and I had a copy of something else that I just won, and I didn't want it. And I was like, hey, you want to trade for Tanks? And he was like, sure. So I have a copy, but I don't have it at home. Or, I mean, I don't have it built or anything like that. It's down in the basement. Um, there were the southeastern Wisconsin Battle Badgers were running tanks amongst other Gale Force 9 stuff, and also some Malifaux. They were running it at Tabletop Minions Expo back in June. And so that was cool. I wanted to get a chance to play Tanks because I wanted to give it a try. Tanks is basically Gale Force 9's answer to some degree to X-Wing. It's a game of we've got maybe 2 tanks per side and we're having a battle, but the movement and all that stuff is little kind of cardboard, like straight pieces and curved pieces and things like that. So you take the tank and then you move it over here and you follow the little, doohickeys. So it's a very simplified kind of game for it, but it's kind of cool. I like the concept of it because it's just tanks. I don't like painting Flames of War infantry; they're no fun. But I like painting tanks, and it's a quick, simple, kind of sort of fun game. Now, the question for me is it too simple? Like, is it good for younger kids? But for me, I would be bored by it. I don't know. I have to try it and sort of find out. But Douglas Hooker says Tanks is an awesome gateway game, which I can totally see. That really does make sense. And a lot of people were playing it at TMX, so that was a lot of fun too. But definitely. Ryan, X-Wing is a good starter. X-Wing is also a very good gateway game. I did a video years ago about gateway games, and X-Wing was one of the big ones that I mentioned in there, but there were other ones as well. Ulysses North America, which is the company making the RPG for 40K, is headed by Ross Watson, who led development of Rogue Trader and Deathwatch. Oh, that's pretty cool. They're holding a panel at Gen Con to talk about Wrath and Glory. That's all I know about them. Well, that's more than I knew about them, so I appreciate it, Daniel. Um, it sounds like they must be a relatively newish company, but with people who've worked on other projects before. Deathwatch and Rogue Trader were both RPGs that were based in the 40 games or 40K universe, and they were made by Fantasy Flight back, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I mean, they were still in production up until just recently, but that's when they first started. So the original, I forget what the original 40K game was called. Dark something, I think. Just like most things from Games Workshop, it was Dark something. But then they made Rogue Trader and Dark Heresy, I think is what it was called. The first one was Dark Heresy, then there was Rogue Trader, and then there was Death Watch. So in Dark Heresy, if I remember correctly, you played as basically kind of like henchmen, although there's another word for it, so I can't think of off the top of my head. Retinue. You were part of the retinue for an Inquisitor. So the GM played the Inquisitor, and the rest of you played like basically the flunkies for the Inquisitor. In Rogue Trader, one player, I believe, played the Rogue Trader on the ship, and everybody else played the crew, but maybe the GM played the Rogue Trader. I don't remember. I didn't really play either of them. But then Death Watch was you guys were all Space Marines, and you were Death Watch Space Marines, and you were doing Death Watch stuff. So that was fun. But they had the 3 different games, and I don't know that they were super compatible. I think you could bring some characters across, but I'm not sure. Um, Philip asks, "What's the thing you look forward to the most at Gen Con?" And then Roland asks nearly the same question immediately afterwards, so that's cool. I will answer those questions. I think the thing that I'm looking most forward to is seeing friends I haven't seen in a while, including Matt, including Jay, and a bunch of other guys. Probably doing some meetings with a couple different companies and talking to them about that stuff, seeing new stuff. Um, the meetup on Saturday night that I'm planning. So if you guys are going to be at Gen Con, I hope to see you at the meetup. There's a link to the information on the Facebook page. There's an event, so you can find the information there. Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't. There's not like a big. I don't know. There's nothing that's like this is a thing I really need to pick up. I mean, in board gaming, that's a lot bigger of a thing. You see a lot more board game companies, like especially Fantasy Flight. They will bring stuff that's not out till October or maybe not out till September, but you can get it at Gen Con because they get like an early print, from the manufacturer, and they bring it to Gen Con, which is why there's always a line that's like 500 people long for the FFG booth, and then you stand there in line for 4 hours and waste half your day, and then you get to buy this game, which if you just wait another 2 months, you could get, at your local store. Um, but anyway, I'm generally not into that. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, every once in a while, there's like special con exclusives. Years and years and years ago, when it was still back in Milwaukee, in the late '90s, a new edition of BattleTech came out, and there was a special, only 1,000, printing of the new BattleTech Compendium, which was the main rules book. And it was going to be, it was only, you could only get it at Gen Con, and it was like a dark blue, like faux leather type cover, and it had like a silver mech stamped on the front, and that was the entire artwork. There was nothing else, and then it was numbered inside and everything like that. And I stood in line for hours and hours and hours to get one, and then bought one. And my life is not that much different because of it. So I don't know that I'm super big into, like I could have just gotten the regular compendium when it came out in stores, like a little bit after that. Yeah, I'm not a big collector for that kind of stuff. I'm not super into limited edition junk, I guess. So, but there's a lot of that goes on at Gen Con. Gaddis Gaming says the tanks is X-Wing on the ground. Yeah, that's kind of basically the case. Oh, Matthew didn't get to ban anyone this week. You don't want to, because then someone's gonna. You don't want to. Yeah, that's fine. Douglas Hooker says Firefly new board game. Yay! It's a skirmish game for browncoats. Please report on it when you're there. Well, is it a skirmish game or is it a board game, or is it like a gateway game? I'll have to take a look. If I see the Firefly thing and it looks like it's actually a skirmishy kind of game played on a board, then I'll be interested to some degree. But if it's just a board game with little models that you move around, like you're playing Life or Sorry, then I'm not super interested. I mean, there are games out there where, you know, it's basically a gateway game where it is a board game. You play it on a board, but you use models and you have to understand range and you have to understand line of sight and all those kind of things. Those are the types of games that are gateway games that can help to get board gamers into, hopefully, eventually tabletop wargaming. But a fancy game that's got a fancy board and has lots of fancy miniatures, but they're just markers as you move along the board and do things, maybe control areas or whatever. Those, in my mind, are still just regular board games. They're not a game. So I'll have to take a look and see about that. I'll have to take a look at the thing, the Firefly game. So is anyone else getting in on the Bones 4 Kickstarter? I'm not. I almost pulled the trigger on the original Bones 1 Kickstarter, whereas I would have paid like $125, I think, was the level I was thinking about. I almost did it. I was on the page and I was like, eh. But I would have gotten so many models. I would have been like, and my thought was like, well, there's like these like 6 or 7 models that I really want. Well, what I'll do is I'll buy this thing, $125, and get a billion models, and then I'll just sell all the rest of them on eBay and make my money back. It'll be great. And I started to think to myself, everyone else is going to do that too. So no one's going to be interested to buy the models off of eBay if everybody's selling them on eBay. So I did not pull the trigger. And what I did is I just waited. I was patient and waited until those models that I was interested in for Bones actually came out. And then I just bought those, and it was cheaper, and I was happier. Let's see here. Moderator Matt has told everyone that he also likes tacos. That's good. Good to hear. Julian says, "Are you going to Gen Con?" I'm going to Gen Con this weekend. If I see you, I will say hi. Anything you're looking forward to? Yes, Julian, I am going to Gen Con. If you're going to Gen Con and you're not busy on Saturday night at 7 p.m., whatever local time is there, I don't know if it's Eastern time or Central time, whatever the local 7 o'clock p.m. time is in there at Indianapolis, there's a sandwich shop in Monument Circle called Potbelly, and there's going to be a Tabletop Minions meetup there, 7 o'clock on Saturday. So if you go to the Tabletop Minions Facebook page, there's an event in the events section of the Facebook page, and you should be able to find the information you need there. So if you're interested, show up. That'll be cool. But yeah, otherwise, we'll see how it goes. What is a gateway game? Well, a gateway game, like I just mentioned, is basically a game that kind of bridges the gap between board game and war game. So it comes usually in a box, and there's usually, you don't lay out like a mat, like a big it's more like, here's like, if you're familiar with Space Hulk. Space Hulk is a great gateway game because it all comes in a box. You get all the parts you need, and then you play it, but you are learning about line of sight, and you're learning about weapon range, and you're learning about the things that make war games, but in kind of a board game sort of thing. If you take a board gamer and immediately throw them in a war game, they'll be like, this is very confusing, I don't get it. But if you open up a box and start putting tiles down and stuff like that, they'll be like, oh, okay, cool, it's a board game. And then you go, well, these guys can't shoot at these guys because they can't see them, or these guys need to get closer so they can use this weapon, and then you're kind of easing them into it. That's basically what a gateway game is. So let's see. Still scrolling. Indianapolis is in the Eastern time zone. Thank you very much. My wife likes the sound of your voice, says Joshua. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I would probably sound a little better if I had the right mic turned on, but as it turns out, I'm a spaz as far as that's concerned. Kevin says, wow, 50th Gen Con. My first was in 1977 at Lake Geneva Playboy Resort. I remember that. Dominated by D&D back then. I mean, I don't remember being there because I was 6 in 1977, but I do remember hearing that they used to have it at the Playboy Resort in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Dominated by D&D back then. I'm seriously old. LOL. I remember buying my first minis there. Empire of the Petal Throne. Interesting. That's kind of cool. Yeah, so when when Gen Con first started, it started in Wisconsin. It was started by TSR, which was the company that originally made Dungeons and Dragons. So they made Dungeons and Dragons. They started to have this convention, and they called it Gen Con. Gen Con, interestingly enough, is short for the Geneva Convention. Now, the Geneva Convention, it has something to do with World War II. It was the group of people that got together and said, these are the rules that we have to abide by during World War II, or whatever. That was, I'm obviously a historical scientist. Anyway, so the Geneva Convention, it was a play on the Geneva Convention because before D&D and role-playing games came about, it was mostly historical wargaming. So because it took place in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, as opposed to Lake Geneva, Switzerland, they called it the Geneva Convention, which was a play on, where it was actually based out of. So, yeah, so it was the Geneva Convention for years, and then they shortened it to Gen Con. But when it first started, it was historical wargaming. And it was Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax who were playing, it's a historical war game, and they were like, we really want to play like a fantasy war game because we're really into the Lord of the Rings. So they started making a fantasy war game, which I believe was called Chainmail. And then they got to a point where they're like, you know what? It's really cool that I have all these guys, but I just want to be one guy, and I just want to like concern myself with this one guy, and maybe you have one guy and you have one guy, and then we play against a bunch of monsters that somebody else runs. And that's kind of how they invented D&D. So, and then that started to get super popular, and the company grew, and they started to move, Gen Con to different places, UW Parkside in Wisconsin, and then eventually they moved it to Milwaukee, and then it was in Milwaukee for a number of years, and then, like I said, in the early 2000s, they moved it to Indianapolis. But before they moved to Indianapolis, TSR got bought by Wizards of the Coast because TSR was circling the drain, frankly. They were not doing well. Gen Con was their major, a couple years in a row, the reason they were able to pay their employees was because of the money they made from Gen Con, not because of the money they were making from Dungeons & Dragons, because they were kind of mismanaging Dungeons & Dragons, and there was all kinds of issues and stuff. So they were sort of teetering on the edge, and then Wizards of the Coast got huge because of Magic, and then bought TSR, and therefore also Gen Con, and also Dungeons & Dragons. They still own Dungeons & Dragons, but they sold off Gen Con to, I believe it was Peter Atkinson, who was past president of Wizards of the Coast. They sold it off to him, and now there's a new president. I just saw a press release recently. There's a new president at Gen Con. So Gen Con is now its own company. It has nothing to do with any other game company. It's not owned by Wizards of the Coast. It's not owned by TSR. It's just its own thing. So anyway, short little history about what's going on there with Gen Con. Funny point, in my earliest days walking around at Gen Con back in the early 90s, I remember walking past this booth that had this weird sign and a weird name, and it was called Wizards of the Coast. And it was a single 10 by 10, maybe it was 2 booths, but I think it was a single 10 by 10 booth with like a printed banner that said Wizards of the Coast, and there was like a bunch of dudes standing around in there, and everyone's like, who are these guys? And I think at the time they had an RPG, and then they came up with Magic, and then everything went, And so, yeah, very interesting. Let me see here. My mom burned my D&D and other gaming books. Damn you, Tom Hanks and Mazes and Monsters. If you get a chance, if you can find it online someplace, there's an old movie from the 80s called Mazes and Monsters that was about the evils of Dungeons and Dragons, and it starred Tom Hanks before he was anybody. So yeah, go check that one out. It's sort of fun. But yeah, the D&D was demonized, no pun intended, for quite some time during the mid 80s and into the early 90s for a while, and then that stopped. So, all right. Well, I'm going to end the chat. I went a little bit longer here because we had so many technical difficulties, and I appreciate everyone sticking around. And so yeah, I again apologize for the technical difficulties. Apologize for the weird audio with the bad mic and YouTube's shenanigans. I'm going to try to see if I can figure that stuff out, fix that stuff. Again, if you're going to Gen Con this year and you're going to be there on Saturday night and you're free at 7 p.m., show up. Come down to Potbelly Sandwiches and have a lovely sandwich or a really big pickle or just a soda, or they make good cookies too. They make lots of stuff. And hang out, say hi. There'll be a bunch of people there, hopefully. If we have to, we will move out into the circle. I don't know, because it's a really small shop, and there might be lots of people already there, like eating, so we might have to do that. But it's fine. It should hopefully be a good day, like, weather-wise. But yeah, so 7 p.m. Saturday at Gen Con. I will be doing reports directly from Gen Con, filming with this trusty camera with this fuzzy thing on top, which is a microphone, and one of these weird GorillaPod tripods, and I'll be editing and putting stuff up, and then I'll tell you guys all about it in 2 weeks, because I'll be back by then. And so hopefully we'll have more information about that, and maybe we'll have more information about Necromunda and see how things are going with that. So again, thank you very much. Thanks for sticking by with all of the problems, and we will see you in 2 weeks, and thanks for watching.